Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Like a Boss. I'm Courtney Spencer, Vice President of Advertising for the Portland Press Herald. Today, Press Herald publisher and CEO Lisa DeSisto will sit down with Dr. Joan Farini-Mundy, President of the University of Maine. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our generous sponsors for their support. They make this programming possible. So thank you to Bernstein Schur, Hub International, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, JP Morgan Chase, Vistage, and Coffee by Design. Here to say a few words is Asha Shevaria, part of the Construction Law Practice Group at Bernstein Schur. I'll turn it over to you, Asha.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Asha Shevaria, and I'm a shareholder here at Bernstein Schur and the chair of the Construction Law Practice Group at Bernstein Schur. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here today for the second conversation in the Like a Boss series for 2021. Bernstein Schur is a very proud sponsor of today's event featuring Dr. Farini-Mundy. It's really exciting to get involved with a series that provides a personal view into the everyday realities of leadership, and today it's in conjunction with educational institutions. As this week marks the one-year anniversary of the pandemic, I'm reminded of how much things have changed, and perhaps even more surprisingly, how much things have stayed the same when it comes to meeting the demands and remaining agile and responsive to the challenges that face us all. And in addition, as we prepare for the future. So these issues are evergreen, but I'm personally found that the pandemic has forced pretty creative thinking and problem solving by many of our leaders. So I'm looking forward to hearing for Dr. Farini-Mundy today about how she has met the challenges at the university. So I'd like to thank Lisa DeSisto and the Portland Press Herald for hosting this event. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Courtney.
Thanks, Asha. Now let's hear from Lisa DeSisto and Dr. Joan Farini-Mundy.
Thank you, Courtney, and thank you, Asha, and thank you to our sponsors, and welcome everyone. It is so fun to see everyone checking in from all around the state and outside the state to join us for our talk today with President Farini-Mundy. And welcome, President Farini-Mundy. Oh, you're muted.
I'm not sure I understand.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm delighted to be here.
We're so happy to have you and hear all about what's going on at the University of Maine. And I thought we could just start by you giving us an overview of what your role is and how it works within the UMaine system, which admittedly can be a little complicated.
That's true, but I'll try to simplify that for everybody. And I'm delighted to see so many friends and familiar names coming across the chat. Hello all. So the University of Maine is the state's land grant, flagship land, sea, and space grant university. We are a statewide entity. We've been here since 1865, and we are in the position of serving the entire state. But we are also part of the University of Maine system, which comprises all of the universities in the system, all 7 institutions. The system is led by a chancellor and a board of trustees. And then each university has its own boards of visitors, its own presidents, and its own distinctive campus missions. And we work together collaboratively. In fact, just last year, we reached a great milestone in achieving what's called unified accreditation through our New England accreditor. And so we are working collaboratively to address the state of Maine's needs and challenges, but each university has its own distinct issues and challenges itself.
And recently you were, the title of Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation was added to your title. So what does that mean? Does that mean you now have 2 jobs? Because that is definitely a trend these days.
I should have answered more in the last question. So my title here is I'm the president of the University of Maine and our regional campus, the University of Maine at Machias. And yes, recently I was invited to assume the responsibility of being vice chancellor for research and innovation, which is a system level position. And at this stage, what this means is, we're looking to help to expand and grow the research opportunities that we see across the entire system. Including, of course, here at UMaine, but also using UMaine's infrastructure and capacity as a base for expanding across the system. So I'm looking forward to working with colleagues in all of the institutions to continue to grow our research efforts.
Great. All right. So let's do the little Wayback Machine and take a path to get to you today. And we also want to talk too about the chancellor's announcement that the system is hoping it is planning on reopening to new normal. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. And then, Like a Boss is really about your leadership principles. So for all of the folks that are with us today to learn about how you've been successful in your career path and navigate your challenges as leader. So let's start with where you grew up.
So I grew up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's close to Maine. It's not Maine, but very near, and spent my very happy childhood there with my family, 2 brothers. My folks went to Portsmouth High School and had a wonderful time living on the seacoast, but also having access to the rest of the beautiful state of New Hampshire.
Yeah, I always say you can't get to Maine without going through Portsmouth, right? So
Fair
you
enough.
are really, you live that. Now, I always try to make a connection with my guest to the newspaper industry, and your dad is that connection for us today. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think of us as a newspaper family. My dad began his professional life really as a newsboy for the Portsmouth Herald in his youth, and stayed with them for his entire career. He was the mechanical superintendent in the days of, hot metal type, and then became eventually the publisher of the paper. So we were very close to that paper, and we talked newspaper all the time.
That's great. That's great. See, I love it. And then when did you realize you were good at math?
So somewhere around the 4th grade, there was this option for us to enroll in some sort of an enrichment program up at the high school, which was a very big deal that we would get to go over there and study something. And so when the choices came along, there was a math option. And I thought, I really do like this. Maybe I'll try this to see if I'm actually good at it. And I did, and it was just fascinating. The high school teacher that we worked with thought up all kinds of interesting puzzles and games and ways to engage us. And so it was really in elementary school. I will say, I remember liking it a lot and realizing it was perhaps my favorite subject. It was always hard. Math is really tough. And so, being good at it, not so sure, but loving it was clearly something that came around by the 4th grade.
I can tell you that I feared it starting in 2nd grade. So, yeah,
That's so
so
sad. It's so sad, but
I know
always time to reform.
there are, but I will tell you that I'm really good at puzzles. So,
It's the same thing.
I must have some part of that works. So then what did you go on to study after high school? Because that's impressive.
Well, first of all, I selected the University of New Hampshire. It was close to home. I wanted to be close to home. I was happy to be in a state public institution, and my goal was to be a high school math teacher, which I actually was for a little while. I liked math. By then, I had a sense that other people didn't. I met people like you who even as early as 2nd grade decided, but I could see that it was an important field for folks. It opened up some doors, and so my early goals were to try to help people understand it better. I was curious about why people either didn't like it or had so much trouble with it. And I thought if I were a teacher, I could have a chance to help them succeed. So I went to UNH, studied to be a teacher, student taught at Spalding High School in Rochester, New Hampshire, and then did go on to teach high school for a couple of years at St. Paul's School in Concord, New Hampshire. By then, I was realizing that I was especially curious about how people learned math. Went back and got a PhD at UNH in mathematics education through the math department there, where I was interested in calculus learning and what makes calculus learning hard. And so that was my early research.
Wow. And then you went on to teach at the university level.
I did. I taught at the University of New Hampshire for several years. I taught math. I taught teacher education courses. I taught math education courses and worked with doctoral students there. And then went on to do a variety of other things. I've been very fortunate in my career to have lots of opportunities, really all kind of building around this math interest, this notion of making math and then more broadly the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, more accessible to more people. And so I taught at UNH. I worked for a short time at the National Academy of Sciences on the staff there. That was a fascinating place. Moved on to Michigan State University, which was a very different kind of environment than what I'd been in before. Spent time then working at the National Science Foundation, and then was fortunate to come to the University of Maine.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about your time at the National Science Foundation. So describe what their objective is, because science is so hot right now that that's got to be an exciting place to be.
It really was, and it is. So National Science Foundation is a federal agency that is a grant-making organization. So basically, working there was all about seeing the very best ideas from people all around the country, sent in the form of grant proposals, and then working with professionals, again, from around the country, experts across the STEM areas, to select which of those proposals had the most promise, which could be funded, and then work to make sure dollars went out to the fields, to the scientists, and engineers and mathematicians and educators to actually engage in research around science, to work on talent development and programs to educate more people successfully in these fields, and to, again, make a difference in emerging areas of need for the country. So it was like working in a candy store, right? All day long, you saw everybody's best ideas, because that's what people send in to the funder, their best thinking. And unfortunately, not everybody can be funded, but the work of trying to decide which would be funded, and also shaping new directions for research at the same time.
So it's like being a judge at a science fair at the highest level, right?
Yeah, sort of like that. And with a committee of people, because no one person ever decided, but yes, absolutely. And learning a lot of new content daily, because in order to understand these proposals, one needed to be pretty broad in knowledge. So I loved it there. Fantastic colleagues and great opportunities to make a difference.
So you loved it there, but then you got recruited to come to the University of Maine. So
Well,
how did they find you, and why was it an attractive opportunity?
Well, I've been at NSF a while. I had risen up through the ranks and had done successively more, sort of senior kinds of jobs. And I was the chief operating officer. And so a search firm found me, tried out the idea. And, really, as much as I loved my job at NSF, the idea of the University of Maine, which I had known of since I was, a kid, the idea of being in New England, and the idea of, frankly, being much more directly involved with faculty and with students. The NSF was great, but it's one step removed. You're reading people's good work, and then helping them to secure funding. Here at the university, you're actually working day by day with faculty, with students, helping them to make a difference and to make a difference for them. So it was very appealing. And as the search process went on through all of its many steps and stages, I just got more and more intrigued and interested. And I thought this really could be a wonderful place for me to try to make a difference.
So your IQ is obviously off the charts, but to be successful as a leader and president, you really need to have strong EQ. So how do you, with your background, bring those two things together?
Well, my background is math and education, and those two, in many ways, one might think, well, those require sort of different sides of the brain to think about, and maybe they do. The cultures in the world of mathematics are rather different from those that one experiences in education, and I've kind of grown up with both. At one place where I was, in the math department meetings, we'd be seated in rows, voting formally and being very formal and serious, and in another, across the hall, another meeting the same afternoon in the ed school, there might be people in a circle eating cookies and tea, but everybody was always concerned with doing the best they could. And so for me, it's been a career-long experience, really, of integrating the kind of analytic, in some sense, dispassionate work that occurs in mathematics with the very subjective, qualitative, important work of understanding where people are, listening very carefully. That is part of education. And I feel fortunate that I've been able to have career options that have helped me grow in that integration.
So we're going to come back to your leadership style, but let's pivot to what's happening on campus during the pandemic. So kind of describe what the state is now, how students, faculty are coping, and then we'll kind of jump ahead to the fall in a minute.
Sure. So it's been, just about a year to the day. Yesterday was the anniversary of when we announced through the chancellor and for the system that we were asking faculty to move everything to an online mode and asking students to prepare to leave our residence halls and to move home. And so it's been a year like no other, but it has been for everybody in the world pretty much. For us here at UMaine, what it has meant is incredible need for flexibility. And early on, we decided our watchwords were we're going to be compassionate and we're going to be flexible. We're going to put students first. So we sent everybody home last spring. We regrouped and tried to figure out whether research could continue under safe conditions with civil guidance in play, how we would offer courses in the summer, largely online. Could we offer summer camps or not, which we do a lot of, we couldn't last summer. This fall, we brought everybody back who wanted to be back face to face with a lot of caveats, right? We have students who are living here on campus who still are taking most of their courses online. We gave a lot of flexibility to faculty and to students to say, you can still offer your courses in multiple modalities. You can, as a student, start out face to face, and if you need to, move online if your circumstances are such that you want to. So the campus has been pretty quiet this year in general. In the fall, we were testing randomly about 10% of our population weekly or every 10 days or so. This spring, we're testing everybody once a week, everybody who's here. And that number is about 6,000. So that's the combination of students, faculty, and staff on campus, moving about, doing their things here on campus. And we're so excited about the prospects of the fall.
So one of the things that you really did was apply some innovation to the testing using one of your ticketing systems. Do you want to talk about that?
Very cool. So the Collins Center for the Arts, which is our performing arts center, stepped up, and folks there came up with a really creative solution for how we could do the scheduling of students, faculty, and staff into our testing operation. And so they essentially did reverse ticketing. Rather than people reserving a ticket for something that they'd like to see as an event, the people in charge of testing, sent out appointments in a ticket format. And actually, we won an award from an organization called Paciolan for the best innovation in the ticketing world this year. So very creative, and that's but one of really probably hundreds of examples, large and small, of people figuring out very innovative ways to keep the university going. And it's just been remarkable to watch.
Yeah, it is great to see the innovation applied to that, because logistics are a big challenge and a really important skill, right? Both for testing, but now also for vaccinations as well. So yeah, that was cool. All right, so we have the big announcement from the chancellor on Wednesday that the fall will look mostly normal. And you said, I watched your press conference, said that much planning needs to be done. So what are the big pieces and how do you get started on that?
So of course, one thing that happens in a university is that planning goes on all year long under any circumstances. As one semester starts and gets up and running, you're getting ready to create the schedule for the next semester to know what courses will be on the books and where they'll meet and how many people can be in them. And then students are selecting and we're advising students, and meanwhile finishing the last semester. So it's very much a culture of planning here. The challenge now, though, is, for example, the current civil guidance is still requiring 6-foot distancing, which we have adhered to very carefully here at the university. And our classrooms are actually rearranged so that the desks are 6 feet apart. And therefore, the size of these classes is much smaller than the capacity of the rooms. So a very fundamental question is whether, we're assuming that guidance continues, but we know things could change. So how do we set up the fall schedule in a practical sense? How many people can be in each section? What would happen if we could go to a different spacing arrangement? Do we plan and keep the spacing? Even the physical work of putting all the desks back will take several weeks. So it's that kind of thing. But I have to say, the people here in logistics, in operations, in facilities management are amazingly good. They have had to figure out all of these things, ranging from, as you say, testing to how we'll manage quarantine and isolation together with our residents' life and health experts here, together with what does 6 feet of distance look like in every one of our classroom settings. So it's very tricky right now because we need to plan for a fall semester. We want to be here and as open as available as we can be, we also know that we must put safety first and the conditions could be changed.
Right, right. Yeah, it's definitely complicated and fluid. There was a question from one of our attendees. How have in-state admissions and applications been affected since March 2020?
So that we've of course been watching that very, very closely, and I actually got some fresh off the press data today. Our in-state first year applications are down a little bit over what they looked like last year. And that's typical nationally in general of applications to higher ed. You know, families are managing through the pandemic. They are looking at their circumstances. High schools are very, different across the country and certainly even across New England and even in Maine in terms of whether they are face-to-face, whether students are in school, whether students are working remotely. And so guidance counselors and others who are working with students to help them make their future plans have new modes of operating. A lot has changed. So those are down. But what's really interesting is that in our in-state set of students who have accepted the opportunity to come to UMaine, who've confirmed, we are up 28% over last year. So the applications are a bit down. The numbers are looking good, and we're very excited about that because we are the state land grant. We want to be appealing and attractive and accessible to students in Maine. So we're watching it carefully. We think that the lag, it may just be a timing issue in terms of numbers of applications, but we are here and we're eager to talk to anyone who might be interested in considering our university.
So it seems like maybe in-state high school students are making a decision to stay closer to home.
Perhaps. You know,
Perhaps.
it's very difficult to tell. I think that in general, our balance between in-state and out-of-state at the undergraduate level has been for a while 60-40, in-state 60-40, out-of-state. We're getting a lot of interest from out-of-state as well. I think some of that is Maine perhaps has done such a fine job handling the pandemic and managing health here, as well as now with the vaccine moving quickly. So I think we are hearing from students that Maine is seen as a safe and a welcoming kind of place to be. So again, these next several weeks are most critical for what the fall will look like. But we're very optimistic, and we've innovated. Our folks have innovated terrifically with virtual tours and ways of speaking with faculty at distance, and so making phone calls in ways that we've not done. But we're here and we're hopeful.
One of the things that's standing in the way of many of the main K through 12 schools getting back is a shortage of teachers. And I know that you have a teacher education program at UMaine. Have you been part of any of those conversations, or is there a way you can crank out more teachers for us faster so we can get our kids out of the off Xbox and back to school?
Don't we wish, but
Right.
The University of Maine system does teacher education in several of its institutions. So we talk all the time about how as a system we can improve our statewide impact by the preparation of teachers, both in fields where there are shortages and challenges, and we've done that for a long time, and also simply to step up the numbers. The other profession where we really are hopeful of stepping up numbers is nursing. And right now we're seeing those kinds of needs. We are very, I think we have a strong teacher prep program here at UMaine. We have a RISE center, a research in STEM education center that is also engaged a lot with in-service teachers who are in the schools across the state. And our faculty in our College of Ed have prepared materials and websites and curricula to help support teachers. But I do know, as the parent of really 3 teachers, our son and our daughter-in-law, all teachers, this has been an extremely challenging time for K-12 teachers, and they are remarkable and resilient and very, very clever about how to reach all their students. So we are part of that whole enterprise and always interested in being there for the state of Maine.
Great. I want to go back to one thing. So can you explain the concept of a land grant university? Maybe everyone understands this, but I think maybe not.
No, I will say though that this is my 3rd land grant university, so I'm familiar with them. But land grant actually came about in the mid to late 1800s when the federal government made land available to states so that they could start institutions kind of on the eve of the Industrial Revolution, start institutions, public institutions largely, that would serve to educate um, engineers, agriculture experts, other kinds of technologists in those days, to be able to carry on the work of the state and to move toward economic prosperity. So there are land grants, I believe, in every state now. UMaine is the one in Maine. And we are very, very embedded still in that tradition, because the idea was you were there to help the state. And you were there to not only prepare the workforce that would help the state in its emerging industries, but you were there also to hear the problems of these different professions and areas of the state, which include, of course, agriculture. And there was a very strong agriculture thread through the land grant mission. And so things like 4-H, cooperative extension, a lot of those areas grew out of or were coincident in time with the land grant institution mission, which is to say, not only will we prepare the future ag leaders and business leaders and engineer people, but we will listen to what the field has as problems and bring that back into the university and try to solve those problems. So,
Great. Well, yes, I am a proud
Oh.
graduate of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, which is built on the same principles.
Absolutely.
Started as an agricultural school, right? Yeah.
and the act that started them, signed by President Abraham Lincoln, was the Morrill Act. So it has a long, rich tradition.
So a little history lesson today.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill. So let's move on to my favorite part of the discussion, where we talk about your leadership style. So what are the values that drive you as president?
Well, of course, our primary work is to help learners succeed here at our university. We are about education and the future, really, the development of talent and the preparation of people for the next phases of wherever their lives take them. So my value centers on making sure that our university is doing all that we can, and as well as we can, to educate our students. It's very tightly tied, though, to the land grant mission, actually, which I'll also mention, and that is to serve the state. We're a research institution, which means that we not only teach the students, but we are part of the business of creating new knowledge, of solving complex problems using science and using the disciplines that we have in place here as a comprehensive university. So there's this research and development side of what we do. There's the education of our students part that we do, and a very strong emphasis for me is how do we make sure those two areas are interacting very strongly together. And that consumes much of what we do here, is to think about moving both forward in progressive and successful ways and bringing them together at the same time.
Now let's talk about how you manage your team. So how many direct reports do you have, and how do you drive them forward and set the vision?
So here at UMaine, we have a president's cabinet, which is, I believe, 11 people. That might count me, but in any case, that is the leadership team, and we meet regularly. And that group of people, then each of them has most of them have within their area a whole team underneath. So let's think about, for example, the executive vice president for academic affairs and provost. This person heads up academic affairs, which is a pretty major chunk of the university. It includes working with the deans who head up the colleges of the university, but also working with lifelong learning and with the graduate school, connecting to the graduate school and so forth. So it's a very tiered kind of organization that works through these layers that are well established, and where we have outstanding leaders and managers all the way through the activity. It extends to facilities and to our auxiliary enterprise, to HR, the part of HR that is campus-based, to research, and to also a separate office for innovation and economic development. So the leadership team meets, as I say, regularly, and we have a subgroup of that, an executive cabinet that also meets regularly. And all of our decision-making, when we ever possibly can, comes through those groups. And in the end, when I need to decide things, I've generally been advised very well by lots and lots of people.
You've described your style as one of being an opt-in style. So talk a little bit more about what that is and maybe give an example of it in action.
I started to use that language when lean in was was in the news a little bit more, but I really do think it applies. So as a president in this university, being so excited about what we have here and what our potential is, I really do I have ideas, I have direction, I have thoughts about where we could go and what we could do. But as leaders know, that's not enough to somehow then magically snap your fingers and hope that they happen. And so my style is to be forthright, to let people know what I'm thinking about, and to be pretty clear that I value the idea that others will shape whatever the idea might be. We'll take it to new levels. We'll make it better. We'll inform it and change it. I am a very big believer in the importance of having diversity at the table, because that's what will shape the quality of ideas and bring more perspective. So sort of put the ideas out there, see who opts in, see where we might get some energy around an idea, and then try to help whoever those folks are move forward toward next stages, whether that be getting funding for the idea or changing policy or practice or implementing in some new way. So I am consultative and I like to hear from others, but I do come to the table with some thoughts about what we might do as well.
Mhm. Could you give a specific idea or an example, I'm sorry, of how opt-in has worked recently?
Well, when I got here, well, universities always have strategic plans. That's a part of what we do, and we need to have them. We need to be thinking about where we're headed, and we need to think about here how we fit within the system and so forth. And the University of Maine strategic plan had been a 5-year plan that had run its course, was done when I got here. And so I remember an early meeting. I got here in July, and we met in August with a retreat of the cabinet and said, okay, we need to start now. What's next? What's our next strategic work going to be? And I can remember we had a great facilitator and we had lots of, Venn diagrams and, mathy. I bring the math in whenever I can.
You
But
got to bring the math in.
the pictures and we got some ideas out and kind of landed on the 3 areas that are traditional to universities, which are usually called, teaching, service, and research. But we captured them a little bit differently and started to play with language about learner success, about discovery, about serving the public and partnering and so forth. And so I felt, at least in that conversation, as I remember it, like I had a lot of chance to put ideas on the table, not only about what the focus might be for this strategic work, but also how we would do it beyond that, how we would broaden that out to a campus-wide discussion. And then I really stepped back, and the provost and the members of the cabinet took that up and figured out how to get the discussions happening across campus. And those ideas got shaped and changed a bit. But in the end, the 3 basic ideas held up, but they were greatly enriched by months of conversation. And they're out there now as our strategic vision and values plan. And I feel very good about having had a hand in launching it, but then letting it go out and having the campus really take it up.
Mhm. Well, I think getting buy-in from your leaders is really important. And then there's more of a sense of ownership and
Right.
also a real drive to have it succeed when you're part of crafting it, right?
That's right.
As opposed to just having it, kind of pushed, chopped down.
That's right.
So let's talk about the students. How do you stay connected to the students?
Well, of course, the students are at the center of everything. That they're what energize the campus. And anybody, well, I can't say that. I, having been in academia a long time, always am really happy when fall comes, because it just breathes this great vitality into a campus, and the students are back, and we can get a sense of their energy. And of course, the students come through and they make their mark here. They have their experience and they move on. But we're changed. Every class that leaves us has had something that has shaped the university. I stay in touch with students in a variety of ways. There are the sort of formal ways, regular meetings with the student government leaders, the elected leaders of student government, meetings and time together with student groups like All Maine Women and the Senior Skull, which is a group of men who work on service and traditions in the university. Over my time here, I've of course spent time talking to the athletes and getting to their competitions. And I spent some time in the last year sitting in on a math class. I had this delusion that perhaps I could teach it, but it was way beyond what I could have managed. The faculty there were handling multiple kinds of technology, even pre-pandemic, and beyond. But I did get a chance to chat with students there a little and try to help. And I also hold office hours, open office hours when I can, offering to meet with anybody who would like to meet. And so students come there sometimes with their ideas.
Have you been able to keep your office hours up during the pandemic, or have you done them virtually? How has that worked?
Done them virtually and done them a little bit less because the scheduling of everything has just gotten really tight. But we've had a few, and I held some just last week with prospective students. We opened it up to students who've been admitted if they would like to talk with me and learn a little bit more about the university. And so we did some of that. But it's key here to be connected to students and to see how they grow over those 4 years and keep an eye on whether our university is doing all it can to support them.
Mhm. You had a great story about some change that has come out of a student coming to one of your office hours. Could you share that?
Student came to an office hour and expressed her concern. In a course, I guess she'd been studying issues of the naming of buildings and monuments, and brought her concern about the name of a building on campus, the C.C. Little Hall. And this has been a topic that has come up and been addressed in different ways here. But anyhow, the student came and said she would really like us to take a look at the name of that building and to determine if we were, if that still fit with our values and if that was a name we wanted. And after quite a long series of activities, including a special committee and work with the Board of Trustees and many other things, and the student participated in the committee, they came forward with a recommendation that we actually remove the name from the building. And we're in the process now of taking the next step to determine the next name to finalize that. But that was a student who brought that and made her case. And I love it when something like that makes such a difference.
Yeah, I think it's really incredible that someone can come to office hours, get access to the president of the university, and see real change come out of it. So
Well, we do what we can. We can't change everything that everyone's concerned about, but
yeah.
but it's a great chance to get to know people and to listen.
Now, how do you interact with the presidents of the other universities in the system, and do you actually compete for students?
So a couple of great questions there. First of all, we meet a lot. During the pandemic, we've been meeting with the chancellor and some of the system staff twice a week regularly. And then we have a monthly President's Council meeting where we go through a lot of system business. And in this past year, because we've been working on the unified accreditation accomplishment, we have had a lot of time together to put together the principles that would guide our unified accreditation work and other things. So we're professional collaborators all the time. I will have to say that I got a text from one of my fellow presidents just yesterday saying, "Hey, how come you got a vaccine? You're way younger than I am," which was, of course, quite tongue in cheek because
Yeah.
I am not. I'm well within the age bounds for the vaccine. So it's a friendly, collegial kind of team. Competing for students, that's a challenge. I mean, in the state of Maine, the number of students that we have who are high school age is declining steadily. And so on the in-state part of things, students have great choices about where they might go. I guess I'll say it that way. And fortunately, all of our universities have some distinctions that are historic, but also have been worked on by those universities. Every single one of them can say what they sort of bring that's special, or what their niche might be, or what their particular strengths might be. And that really is, I think, a very good situation for us in the state of Maine, because then students can take a look and find the place that is the best fit for them. And these institutions are of different sizes and different scale. And so my sense is that we're doing a good job of helping the Maine students find the place that fits best for them without competing unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of Maine, I always ask the guests about the pros and cons of being in Maine. So from the University of Maine perspective, how does Maine factor in as an advantage and then also as a challenge?
So I think some of the challenges are also actually potential advantages. So I might kind of blur the two in my answer, but Maine is rural, and that can be a challenge. I mean, we've seen what the challenge has been with broadband access, for example, for students across the state. I was talking with a faculty member down in Machias yesterday who was worried that his phone connection wasn't great, but maybe if he moved over to campus and drove over there, we could have a better conversation. You know, it's a constant challenge for us. At the same time, during this pandemic, we have figured out a way to reach rural students and to give some options even more fully than we had before with online teaching. And because we have such, you know, a large state in terms of geography, figuring that out can put us into a kind of prominent position as a system if we're able to reach our rural students well. So that's one area. You know, another fantastic advantage for the state of Maine and for this university is the extraordinary natural resources that the state has to offer, and the way in which our researchers are tightly engaged with trying to both protect but also work for the future of those resources. So for instance, we have really strong work going on in the forest resources industry for Maine, looking at use of forest products that can take us well into the future in a whole host of application areas. Similarly, we work in aquaculture and have scientists who are looking for ways to even improve that industry with our great coastline and our great opportunities. So those are two. And then one clear advantage in my view is the closeness of the leadership communities across the state of Maine. We're pretty small. And I came from Northern Virginia and the DC area where, you know, you might get to know a few key leaders very close to you in your own field. But here in Maine, people are so welcoming and accessible. It's possible to talk to people and to pick up the phone or pick up the phone just twice to get to someone, to collaborate together, to try to solve a problem or to hear a challenge. And so I think that's actually a real advantage.
Mhm. Well, I know you had mentioned too, access to the congressional delegation, right? They just seem
Absolutely.
so accessible and available. And I think for students, that's, you know, got to be something impressive.
Yes. And they are just phenomenally open and available. They're terrific supporters of our university system, of course, and our state. And it's almost unheard of elsewhere, as I have colleagues in other parts of the country, presidents, to be able to get a chance to talk to their senators, their representatives so readily. So that is a real advantage. And similarly with the legislature and the governor and her staff, very available, accessible groups of people, and they have been terrific in supporting the university and the system, but also hearing our challenges and working with us to try to address them.
Now, you're also one of the biggest promoters of Maine outside the state, though, because you have the flagship match program.
Right. And I hope you've seen our great billboards.
I last time I was in Massachusetts 2 years ago, I did.
Did you? Well, you know, that was something conceived before I got here. Very clever idea that has brought us some great yield in out-of-state students. And basically the idea is to advertise that for qualified students, and there are some caveats there, you can come to the University of Maine at the prices of your state flagship university. So when it started, it was quite a draw. Other states have now figured out kind of ways to counter this. But what it does for us is it brings us a much broader range of students with interests and experience, you know, that adds to what we bring them here, what we have in Maine. So that has been a very useful tool for us, and it's helped us establish visibility within the region and even beyond. That's great for the university.
Yeah, it's fun to see the University of Maine promoted down in Boston. I think I saw it at Fenway, and so come on up, come on up. There's plenty of ice fishing still to be done, right?
There is, absolutely.
So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about some exciting things that are happening on campus, including the progress on the new engineering facility that's scheduled to open in the fall.
Yeah, well, fall of 22. I mean, we've still got.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. It's only 21, right? Okay. A year and a half. Yeah.
It's on schedule.
Right.
Maybe early.
Right.
Right. So we're very fortunate, and this work started again long before I got here. But the state of Maine, as you may know, has great need for personnel in engineering and in the computing fields that are related to engineering and other fields, particularly with as people, as that profession ages and people are ready for retirement. And so the University of Maine is a major supplier of engineers to the state. And several years ago, they came up with this concept of the Engineering Education and Design Center, a new building supported with state bonding and also with tremendous donor contributions that will be a site for the education of our engineers for the future. And it's being built on the campus. It's going up quickly, it seems, and we just had an event called a beam signing, where people could go and put their signature on a beam that would then be installed at the top of the building. And so we publicized that. But this will be a fantastic resource, not just for engineering students and faculty, but for the entire campus. The generous donors, Jim and Eileen Ferland, the building will be named for them. And all of our campus tours will start in a space in the building on the first floor, so that people will see this wonderful new opportunity. And to tell you the truth, to be able to go out on walks here on campus and see that going up is just, that's kind of a beacon of hope. We're growing, we're expanding what we're doing, we're trying to be modern, and all of that is terrific.
Well, and I know that the School of Engineering has like a ridiculous placement rate of 99%.
That's right.
So it's just critical for you to continue to educate and produce all of these engineers for our future. So that's exciting news.
Told it's 99%, or one of the years it was 99%, because there was one person who decided to take a year off and do a tour of the world, or it would have been 100% that year.
Right.
But no, they did very well. We hear great reports, by the way, from employers across the state about the preparation of UMaine engineers.
That's great news. Okay, so the game tonight. So the UMass. Oops! I knew I was going to do that at some point. The UMaine women's basketball team, 17-2, takes on Stony Brook tonight at 5 o'clock. So I'm assuming pretty soon you're going to be changing into your black bears.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we wish them the best of luck. But why do you think athletics is so important and gets so much attention at the university level?
Well, I mean, everybody gets excited. Not everybody. A lot of people get really excited about the kind of the spirit and the representation that athletics brings us. It's a way that we interact with peer institutions around the region and even beyond. We are able to show a set of talents among our students that are very special. We're Division I athletics, and so our student athletes are amazing as athletes and as students and as campus citizens. They lead a variety of activities here. They are key to who we are as a university, and UMaine has long traditions and long story of great pride in its athletics. It's also, of course, the subject of, or the place for this very incredibly generous donation from the Harold L. Fund Foundation, where $90 million will be coming to the University of Maine over the next few years for a major renovation of our facilities and and for some new facilities. Again, recognizing that athletics is a force that connects people. It brings folks together. It provides an opportunity to meet new people and to cheer on these athletes. But at the same time, as these facilities are improved, we will be able to host a variety of events from across the state, everything from math counts to robotics to community events, because we will have, again, the kinds of facilities that we can use to attract people to this region. So it's a central part of this university, and we're very excited for basketball tonight, but for football tomorrow and everything else that we're able to keep moving.
Yeah, and it's also has to be a huge factor in recruiting as well, right? I'm not just being the athletes, but just part of the whole experience.
Right, and it's tied to our rec sports activity and the facilities that are here and that are available more broadly, and our pep band and our marching band are connected in with athletics, and so it spans lots of parts of the campus, or it engages people from lots of parts of the campus. And yes, there are students who really want to be here in this kind of a traditional college setting that has athletics going on.
Now, I'm speaking of inclusion. Let's shift gears and talk about the work that you've been doing around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know you've put together 45 recommendations across 9 dimensions. So I want to give you a couple minutes to talk about that. Then we're going to transition into questions. And as predicted, the hour has flown by.
Well, that's what I figured would happen. Excuse me. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to do our land acknowledgement here at this moment. The University of Maine recognizes that it is located on Marsh Island in the homeland of Penobscot people, where issues of water and territorial rights and encroachment upon sacred sites are ongoing. Penobscot homeland is connected to the other Wabanaki tribal nations, the Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, and Micmac, through kinship, alliances, and diplomacy. The university also recognizes that the Penobscot Nation and the other Wabanaki tribal nations are distinct, sovereign, legal, and political entities with their own powers of self-governance and self-determination. And we are using this acknowledgement in all of our public events increasingly. And the reason I wanted to do it is because it frames this work in diversity, equity, and inclusion that we've launched in the past few months. We established a standing president's council on DEI, as we call it. It is a group of people who represent multiple dimensions of diversity as we define it here at UMaine. And as I touched on a couple of places earlier, Lisa, in my view, diversity needs to be a central value here, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and something that we live every day. And so this very strong committee has put together 45 recommendations that are now sitting with the cabinet and then with other groups on the campus for how we operationalize that value, how we take our commitments to it and make them real here on the campus and build on the very good work that is already in place here across the campus. So these recommendations range from establishing a formal office of diversity or a chief diversity officer to looking at our campus public spaces to be clear that they are welcoming and inclusive, to bringing together some of the activities that we have scattered around the campus into a more coherent whole. But I'm just delighted that it's a central conversation for us and will continue to be. We're going to kick off with a campus climate survey that we're piloting this spring to understand how our challenges in diversity, equity, inclusion look from different groups. And we're getting very focused on data. We also are reminding hiring groups that we are expecting diverse pools and outreach to a wide range of places to bring in the broadest sets of candidates that we can. So sort of comprehensive, central to who we are, and it goes way back with us.
Mm-hmm. Do you actually have your plan posted on your website?
We do.
Okay.
We do. We'll put the link in the chat perhaps.
Oh, great. Okay. Because I think, as you know, lots of other companies are putting their plans together and executing their plans and making an ongoing commitment to it. The best way to do is to learn from others and hear what they're doing.
Well, and what we're doing is making this quite an inclusive process, the planning itself, of course. And then we'll be asking folks to tie some of these areas to their to our strategic vision and values framework so that they can show everybody what will be worked on and how. Yes, Sam Warren has posted the report, so it's there.
People are fast. Oh, we just double posted it, which is good. Okay, here's a question from Sam Johnson from the BU School of Theology. What plans do you have to provide college university education for the Wabanaki, which ties into what you just shared with us?
Absolutely. So I would say a couple of things about that. First of all, we do have a Department of Native American Studies that offers a range of options, but that is very specifically focused. I also should say that the University of Maine system has had for some time and continues to have, I want to be sure I get the name of this correct, has had a Native American and Educational Program Waiver Program that essentially provides tuition for regular credit-bearing courses, provides a waiver for that tuition for individuals who have tribal membership. And that's a very important part of making sure that we are seen as an accessible, and that we are accessible to Wabanaki people. And so that is kind of in place, but it's a very important part of our curriculum as well as our intention to be good partners and to be open and hospitable and accessible to the Wabanaki.
That's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, we're wrapping up here. I'm not going to get to all the questions, so my apologies, but I think this is a really great question I wanted to share. I have a super sharp daughter entering high school next year. She is largely nonverbal, but well beyond her peers from an academic perspective. STEAM are her favorite subjects, and it's time for us to be thinking about what college and career could look like for this bright girl with limited social skills. With an increasing percentage of Maine kids being diagnosed on the autism spectrum every year, is UMaine making efforts or investments to embrace this community of dreamers on the spectrum?
It was a great question, really. It is a great question, and I just want to say that UMaine is an open and welcoming and supportive place, and we absolutely would love to see applications from students such as your daughter. I will say we have a very strong student accessibility services operation here on campus that works with students who need accommodations, including those with autism, and also will work very individually with students and their families to set up whatever is needed to be sure that their college experience here at UMaine can be rewarding and fulfilling and can challenge them for whatever comes next. I also would say that at UMaine we have the Maine Autism Institute for Education and Research within our College of Education, a well-established entity that partners with the Maine Department of Education, again, to provide professional development for teachers and others across the state working with students. So we are a place that is diverse, is welcoming, and we would love to hear, we'd love to hear from your daughter.
I got a bunch of questions about STEM versus STEAM, and this one is from Pips Veazey from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. We have quite a reach for Like a Boss. How can organizations across Maine work together to do something bigger in terms of maximizing the opportunities with recent STEM investments into the state? And how can UMaine lead and support these efforts to lift the entire ecosystem?
Well, it's a big, tall order there to do all of that, but we want to be right in the middle of it. I will say on STEAM versus STEM, we talked about this a lot at NSF. STEAM can be science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics, or maybe for us also, the A could stand for agriculture. But in any case, to the question, we are very involved statewide in partnering with the rest of the University of Maine system and in connections with the other universities in Maine. A lot of strength in STEM across the state. We also work closely with the Maine Department of Education on various projects like their standards for K through 12 and their teacher preparation work. And so I think the ecosystem is actually here. The private sector offers tremendous opportunity for internships and connections in these STEM fields. So as far as growing talent, I think we've got all the pieces, and UMaine continues to think about how we can best be a help and a support for efforts in the state. But it's a great topic and one that I'm quite passionately interested in. So watch for more.
Great. So our final question is going to be, describe your Maine, and a related question in it is, how do you de-stress?
So I've been thinking about this one. I did have warning that Lisa would ask me this. And, you know, to the your Maine, I'll just say our family has always liked to do elaborate picnics. Well, I have always liked to do them. In fact, that's how I de-stress, is to make these very complicated dishes and menus for picnics and then throw myself into preparing them with my family. But here in Maine, there's a lot of the year when it's hard to go outside and have a picnic, and yet we have been trying to do that. And so my husband and I'll kind of get in the car. Maybe we've got the picnic or plan to pick one up, but to sort of randomly drive or vaguely drive in some direction and begin to get to see this beautiful, beautiful state. And sometimes we land in quite unexpected places and try to have the picnic. We went to Nicoteus Lake unexpectedly once early in our time here, and it was way too cold to get out, but we had the picnic in the car. You know, so exploring Maine in a leisurely way without a lot of constraints or without being on the way to a meeting, to me feels just so much like home and like a way to get to know what we have here. De-stressing, I cook, I garden, and I birdwatch. And I spend time with my family and our 3 children.
So if you ever get invited to a picnic at the President's House at the University of Maine, do not pass up on that invitation.
Okay,
That's what I'm
That's
what I'm
I've
hearing.
been challenged now to start to open up a little bit more about this hobby, but thank you for that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, President Farini Mundy, and all the work that you do, educating our next generation of leaders and really giving back to the state of Maine. Thank you to all of our sponsors as well for supporting this and to continue the work that we do at the Press Herald. I urge all of you today to support us with a subscription. I also encourage you to sneak out early. It is a Friday afternoon and the sun is out. So thank you and go Black Bears.